Welcome to today's episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast. I'm one of your hosts, David Gilliland. We have the privilege of having Leif Elgathan with us with RetroLux, and we are just delighted to have you on. Welcome, Leif, to the show.
Excited to be here and love the podcast.
Well, we're just excited to have you on. I'd love for the listeners just to understand a little bit about your business and how you got it started, and then let's dive in from there.
Yeah, so RetroLux is a software product that helps electrical contractors with basically all of the things they need to design, sell, and install a lighting retrofit project for a commercial building. So if you work in an office or you've been in a hotel and you see lights up there, and somebody eventually has to change those out, and we build the software that helps them go out and count the lights in the building, decide what they're going to replace them with, order the lights, finance them, and manage getting them installed in a building. So that business idea came out of another business that I started and ran, which was a company that does that for a business. So a service business to upgrade buildings with energy efficient lighting systems. And so we ran into challenges with not having software for our industry, home building a bunch of stuff, and then realizing that there was a market in our industry and developing a product for ourselves initially, and then decided it made sense to productize it, take it to market on its own. So my entire career has been really focused on solving problems for customers, learning about new problems, either for my own business, my industry, or our customers, and then identifying new businesses that can be started to tackle those problems. So come from a background in engineering, but have found that I really like engineering companies more than products or solutions. And so I've focused on building companies ever since. I have a passion for sustainability and clean energy. So all but one of the businesses I've started have been in the sustainability space. Typically, and I've focused on energy efficiency, renewable energy, and other clean energy resources. So that's been where most of my career has been focused. But it all comes down to really understanding a customer need and deciding how you can help solve it, and then determining whether or not there's a real business there to be had. And if so, taking a swing and starting the business and growing it and seeing, how big the market is and how far you want to take it.
Oh, that's cool. So RetroLux has been around for how long?
So I came with the idea in 2011. 2012 started working on it a little bit more in earnest, and then really started to work on it in 2014. 2015, went full time on it. 2016, we raised our first outside capital, I should say, and launched our first product later in 2016 that was commercially ready. So I guess we're just hitting about 8 years now. So been in business for quite a while.
Nice. And again, serving more the contractors than, say, an MEP firm that wants to figure out how to do it more energy efficient.
Yeah, most of our customers are contractors that go out and service buildings every day, just replacing lights that are burned out. And, as LED lighting has come into vogue and smart controls, there's been a lot of opportunity to upgrade buildings with more energy efficient lighting. This has been going on for, about 120 years since the first light bulb was invented. We just keep getting better and better. The contractors do most of that work, but there are specialized firms that are more engineering focused that also use our software, as well as distributors, manufacturers, and financiers. So we have a pretty broad spectrum of customers. We have customers coast to coast, border to border of the US, as well as a few other countries that are English speaking that can use our software kind of out of the box.
That's cool. Yeah, it's always fun to see what other challenges, what other questions are entrepreneurs solving out there, right? Because that's what we do, right? So we'd love to see you doing that, and we just, we cheer you on. It's not just about the product, right? Like, we're building the product because that's got to deliver on the need. And along the way, we've got partners. We've got to hire people. We've got to do some stuff to grow. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what some of the points along the way that you saw that, we've mentioned a little before the show started, that some key points when it was time to pivot, moments when you knew it was time to change out who you worked with, or whatever other, give us a nugget or two we could really leave this call from.
Yeah, so I think almost all businesses go through two very distinct phases. I think most of the listeners of this podcast have gone through the first stage, which is 0 to 1. I got to go find out a customer, something I can sell them, and then deliver on whatever I've sold them I can sell them. and do that enough times to where I'm getting to where I can do it pretty well with myself, maybe a small team I built to help with solving that problem. The next phase is scaling, and you can't scale a business without systems. Like going from 0 to 1 is kind of brute force, as I like to call it. You're brute forcing it. You're doing a lot of the work yourself. You're in the weeds. And if you're going to scale, by definition, you can't do everything. You can't be involved in every part of the process. So your mental shift really goes from a brute force method to a systems method. And so I think when you're thinking systems methods, the very first thing you got to think about is how are you going to align the team around a common vision? And so, that initial vision, maybe we want to go out and build software to sell to lighting contractors. And you quickly realize that that's great, fine, and dandy, but the real market need is that these contractors need an operating system to run their business more effectively. And that operating system may not just be software. And so next thing you know, you're building systems around how can we build a support network, a community around our core product to help them grow, because that's going to make them use the software more, which is their primary way of monetizing. You're going to have to think about, how do you build systems in place so that every new user that comes on or every new customer comes on has a similar experience. And so then you're going to have HR systems, customer support systems, and that thinking around, what is the most important system to build next that's going to allow you to, let part of the business run without you, I think is the key. And one of the things I learned, I think the hard way, was that that I should try to stay involved in each of these pieces of the business longer than I should have. And I should have started earlier hiring experts to be in charge of marketing or to be in charge of customer support that have experience in doing that. So I think, one of the key nuggets I learned is, as an entrepreneur that starts out, we all kind of have to do a little bit of everything. And, once you start to hire experts, you realize like, man, I was doing that, but I was like a C-level student. And I brought in somebody that's an A+, and man, things just get done faster, better, stronger, and they build things out that make more sense and they get running. So I think that's a really key kind of nugget I learned is the faster you can bring on key talent for parts of the business that are breaking or aren't scalable, they can build those systems to be scalable because they have the direct experience doing it. The faster that you can take your eye off the ball for that and spend your time focusing on other topics of the day.
That's such a big key. At $1 million, if you don't shift and start to build the systems by finding the right people who really know their stuff in that space and let them build it, right? Sharing the vision and letting them build it. Without that shift, it's drudgery.
Yep, it is. And when I say vision and systems, it all starts with like, what are you trying to accomplish as a company and what are your KPIs? Because if you give a marketing person like, hey, this is what I need you to accomplish, like this is the outcomes I need you to have, and then let them build the process or the plan around achieving that outcome. And then all you do is pay attention to, is the outcome being achieved or not, that you set them out to achieve. And if they're not getting it done, it either means you got to replace that talent, you've got to give them a more clear picture of what good looks like, or you've got to, maybe even jump in and help brainstorm a little bit about what did I miss and what I was thinking needed to be done. Like what were we missing and that isn't allowing this person to be successful? Do they not have enough resources? Did we underestimate, how much this was going to cost? Those are places you can be more involved as an owner and a leader. But I learned the hard way that if you don't let the person get their way, you either have the wrong person because they're not good enough, which is very common, or you're getting in the way of them doing it the way they want, and you're basically requiring them to do it at your C level instead of letting them do it at their A level. And so I think, that's another like really hard part of letting go. Like, hey, like if I got the right person, I should trust that they're going to do this better than I am. And if I don't have the right person, then I need to find the right person quickly and let them be successful, and let me focus on setting the goals for them so they know where they need to be, and let them, show their talent or, show that they're not the right fit for the role or for the company.
I love that. Restating then, one of the keys after you hit $1 million is quit being the expert in everything. Find the talent, pull them in, and change from being the expert to it's time for me to lead. And in order to let go or to truly delegate, I need to align them to the vision of what we're trying to do. and I need to create clarity around what success really looks like, and then just support them and get out of the way.
100%. Like I said, if you do that and it's not working, then either the person's not the right person, you weren't clear enough on what you're trying to achieve, or you didn't properly understand the problem that they're responsible for sourcing. So you could have given them an impossible task.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's again on leadership. If you tell somebody, it's like, hey, think of yourself as a coach and you put in an alignment as a wide receiver and say, I need you to go, catch a 80-yard Hail Mary, and they fail. Like, it wasn't them that failed. Like,
yeah,
it was you for
yeah,
having unrealistic expectations of what that person or that role or that could even be achieved. So again, it gets back to like being a leader and like recognizing where you've set people up to potentially fail and taking ownership of that as well. So it's almost always one of those three things that actually is causing the problem. As entrepreneurs, what do we want to do? Jump in and fix it. Like, I'm a fixer, I'm a problem solver, and I may be a C student, but I will work 3 times, 10 times harder than the A student, and I'll still beat them. That's our mindset, because that's what got us from 0 to 1. That will never get you from 1 to 10.
yeah.
It just is possible.
Couldn't have said it better. It also kind of leaves with this obvious feeling of, wait a second, so you're telling me I have to get good, or I have to build a system and process so my team can get really good at hiring the right people?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. And that's a skill set all in itself, right? I mean, that just takes time, and a recruiter can't quite replace it for you, but you can get help, but you've got to do the work. You've got to do the hard work behind it.
Yep. I mean, hiring is, I would say, from, after you get from 0 to 1, the one place that you still stay very involved in is hiring. I'm a big believer in that you hire and you're involved in the hiring process directly up to 100 people, and potentially, depending on your company and how comfortable you feel. And it's not so much the talent, because at some point you got people that are better at like understanding, like we did software. Like, I'm gonna have my CTO do the deep dive on, is this person able to code? I'm not going to do that part. I'm an energy engineer. I can tell whether or not they can say whether the light bulb's going to use less energy all day long. I'm not going to do the code test. But what I am going to test for is culture. And I think that's one way that you set the company up for success, maybe not 1 to 10, but 10 to 100, is by making sure the culture in the company and how you do business and how you run day to day is super ingrained in that early employee set, and that it maintains through, enough people to where the inertia of the culture will carry, because you're not the one having those direct one-on-one conversations to drive culture every day. And so I call it, the culture champions that you want to have in the company, but also, you're screening for that. Is this the right type of person that is our type of person? I mean, you can look at any sports team in the world, and teams that are cohesive beat the teams with talent every day. And I'm a huge believer that culture wins. And strategy for me has always been part of the culture. Like, we always have a strategy. We're always driving towards it. It's always like repeated over and over and over and over and over again in the company, so everybody knows what it is. And I think, that's really not how you get from 0 to 1, maybe not even 1 to 10. It's not quite as important, but if it's not ingrained as part of the foundation, you'll run into major problems as you start to go to the next levels.
Yeah, we found it pretty essential in the 1 to 10 if you don't want to hate your business while you're in it, right? I mean, it is such a factor for the joy and for the productivity.
Yep.
But thank you. No, we could geek out on that all day. But rather than do that, let's dive into, you've shared some piece of wisdom. I feel like we could get like 20 more nuggets from you on the call, but you were willing to share with us a little bit of here's a challenge. Here's something you think about that you'd love to. Let's do a little live riffing on this and see what we could bring value wise. And so you're representing others with the same question that you're going to pose for us right now.
Yeah. So I've been fortunate enough to be invited to, as well as just be the instigator of multiple companies. I've started 9, taken 6 to $1 million plus in revenue. I only had one that was almost a failure, but almost all of them either still in operation, have been sold, or were shut down profitably. And I'm at another point in time where, there's an opportunity to either shut down business lines or entire companies, as I try to consolidate or get more focused or whatever. and I always find it really difficult to make those decisions. I've never found a good way of doing it, and so letting go of something that's working but maybe not working as well as you want, or isn't getting to the place you want it to get to as quickly, and you're kind of at the point, where you're like, like it's a good time to make a decision to let it go or to double down. And I'm a terrible quitter. And I think probably most entrepreneurs are, they wouldn't make it through. And so, think, better frameworks for how to, make those decisions, with maybe less emotion, or, some mental frameworks around how to think about those decisions would be, a challenge that I'm constantly faced with, both within a business with different kind of business units, as well as, entire companies, when they're not really meeting, my growth goals, my personal joy goals, or whatever it is that is driving, my interest in it.
No, that's, and let me see if I can reframe that a little bit. You're asking, is there a better framework out there for thinking about letting go of a whole business, or choosing when it's time to either close down, hand off, or sell a business so you can go and focus on other things that you want to?
Yep. Yeah. So mental frameworks, it's always been a gut feel for me. It's just like, I'm done with it, and I feel like that's just a poor way to make decisions generally. But as entrepreneurs, I think that sometimes the big ones are gut calls, maybe. So maybe it is the best way, but I don't know. It's an area where nobody likes to talk about it. It's one of those challenges. Nobody ever wants to admit that they think about not continuing, because that's like not part of our culture. But I think, for me anyways, it's one that always has been a challenge, and it's, there's certainly current areas where it's a challenge.
That's very real. I've had some experiences with several business owners who have chosen to exit or not at different times. And so I can walk you through some of the things that they were looking at. And then for myself, a business that I chose to shut down and move to another, right? That same kind of idea, but you have too. And so I'll just share a framework, and maybe this could be helpful as we look at it. And let me ask you some questions. You talked about the importance of aligning your team to your vision. Could you define for me what the vision is to you? Like, what are the parts of vision? Because I want to play in that area first.
Yeah. So my definition of vision has always been one that I heard, which is like, hey, if you're wildly successful in 20 years, what impact have you had? Like, what is it that you bring to the world that doesn't exist today, or that you could do better? And so to me, like, that's vision. Having to me, it's the North Star version of vision. It's like, where are we generally pointing the ship?
Great. So RetroLux, what is the North Star?
Yeah, so the North Star when I started RetroLux was to have a meaningful impact on reducing carbon emissions by accelerating the speed at which we retrofitted commercial buildings with more energy efficient products.
Okay. So I'm gonna push further to make that more of a North Star, because I think what you just mentioned, you can get to. And I'm not certain we can get to the North Star right now with our current technology. So, so why? Why do you want to help retrofit businesses reducing carbon? Like, why?
Yeah, so the why for me is very simple. I, as a scientist, have reviewed the literature and reviewed the data science, and carbon dioxide is accumulating in the atmosphere, and it is causing already pretty major impacts to environmental and human conditions. And so, for me, it's ultimately comes down to reducing the amount of living creature suffering that will happen as we transition to a low to no carbon economy.
Okay. You want to see that transition happen, and to see as little suffering and as much joy as possible.
Yeah. We should have fun along the way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I only pulled that from what you like to do outdoors. I mean, you're an outdoors enthusiast that doesn't approach the mountains with just a pair of binoculars, but you like to get in there and really push against it. As you're looking at that bigger why, then, if we're going to think a framework of when it's time to step away from something, the question is, and I'm not saying RetroLux is the one you're talking about right now. It may be, but why not achieve your vision through RetroLux? Or is RetroLux and time there keeping you from achieving your vision? Because though it was a good idea, it wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I think when if that's, say that's the vision, the first thing that I always think about is does this business vehicle, is it achieving the vision or have
Yeah.
potential to achieve the vision, and is it able to do it in the time frame that I think it needs to do it in? And that is the lens I look through. Is it possible, and is it happening at the speed it needs to happen, from my perspective, and is it worth the my personal pain and suffering that we all go through as entrepreneurs to push it there.
Yeah.
And so it has a component of can it. Another component is like my belief in will it. And the last piece would be with the amount of energy I'm willing to put into it. And I think that's that's been at a very high level, how I think about things, and that's kind of like the floor, right? If that's not in place for me anyways,
It's
the
out.
economic argument isn't as important. This Retrolux, I guess we don't want to talk about which businesses it is, but Retrolux, we took on investor capital, which brings another dynamic
Yeah.
that you have to consider, which is not just the core unit economics of the business, but also, as soon as you take investor capital, your business model is their business model, as people like to say. You also have to say is like the business economics of this in line with what our investors signed up for. And so
Mhm.
I think those in an investor-backed company, those are your three, probably lenses you should be kind of looking at, along the lines of is the business, succeeding, we'll say. Personal passion of the founder, is kind of always the start.
Mhm.
Then unit economics, business economics, kind of step two. And if you take on investor capital, that quickly becomes kind of the primary lens I think you look through.
So as we look at those and you start to say, where's the power on that? And I think you've got a great model the way you're thinking about it. And I would only tweak one piece that may be helpful, which is instead of the passion and vision of the founder, what's the passion and vision of the whole team? So are we fully aligned in co-creating that future of what we most want? Because if it's not doing it for the whole team, and if we can't see a good exit for the investors, that's a cut your losses kind of opportunity, right? While if it's something that does fulfill the passion of the team and still doesn't meet the needs of the investors, cutting it is also a good idea, but you don't cut the team.
Hmm.
And I think there's a timing issue on here. So I had one person I was working with where they built something that was very meaningful. It was great, it was doing well, started to take off. He'd finally made the transition. The team could build the business without him around, and they were doing it and showing it. And it was exciting, and he was taking all sorts of vacation, and yet things were going well, and he loved it. But the investors looked at it and like, hey, we're at this point. We can get a beautiful multiple. It's time to sell and cash out. And he took it, and so passion was being met. Investors were happy. And the move was, hey, investors win on this. We're doing the sale. But his timing was off because he wasn't part of the sale, right? This is a sale of the asset and the specifically the software going into their business, right? Sucking that up that direction, and he'd be moving on, but he hadn't identified a new passion or a new vehicle that he wanted to pursue that passion with. And I think that is one of the worst times to exit a business, where you go from a passion project to the cash only piece. And I've seen it in a few, and just a deep sort of depression as they pull out of something that brought a lot of fulfillment, a lot of joy, moved a lot of things the right way. And then the team also suffering because some of them did go with that product and not achieving. So we put investors as the number one criteria. That can be problematic. But that's not what it sounded like you're going through. If it sounded like yours is more of a like, I'm not sure this is doing it for me anymore. It's doing fine, but it's not moving fast enough. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally right now, like the challenge is like, yeah, it's not moving fast enough. It's not achieving for me, it's not achieving
The
the
impact.
impact that I
Mhm.
wanted it to at the speed I wanted it to. Like that's usually where like I start to, you know, quickly start to have, thoughts about what else we should be doing. And so is that pivot the product? Is it pivot the business? Is it pivot, is it sell? Is it shut down? Is it, what all the different options? And I've always found that, my nature generally is more to, push harder, a little bit longer, try a little bit more. And so it's always like, when is it time to shut it down, when there's not like an external forcing factor, like the investors want to sell or you're running out of money or whatever else, and then you kind of got to make a choice. It's more of when things are going well, and you're not you're not getting there fast enough.
Do you
um,
use a mission to track your impact?
yeah
And
so personally I've got impact KPI. And
Mhm.
the companies that I work on all will track that as one of the primary KPIs, because at this point in my career I'm not interested in working on things that don't have climate impact.
Mhm.
And so yeah, we do track that, and that's one way that I've learned that I need to start paying attention to this. Like this is a fairly new thinking, is you know I shouldn't just be taking that on feel. I should say, hey, here's where I'm trying to get.
Yeah.
We're measuring it, and does this, again, can this business get there? And is it having the actual impact I want, or is it really just along for the ride? So these are kind of like the second order,
Yeah.
ways to
Second
get.
order thing. So top one is purpose,
Yep.
as we would say. So I'll define vision as I have my purpose, I have my core values, that this is the only way we'll go about doing this business, right? Like we have to live according to these values. And then there's a mission. And the mission, everyone says, if we can hit that mission, and it's a wow kind of mission, it's that BHAG, it's that
Yep.
we know this would have the impact that we care about. And it has a time frame. It's time bound. It's X amount of emissions reduced, or X amount of kilowatts saved, or whatever it is that your measurement is, and that it's big. And the
Mhm.
whole team, and looking at the big picture, you're looking at a world change. So on the big picture of the world, we would have to have this kind of impact for our time to have been worthwhile spending in this business.
Yep.
Then that translates to X amount of revenues and profits. Those are mission goals. But the
Yep.
mission itself is this highly impactful, highly motivating thing that is talked about every day. I think the time to shift is when you're looking at that and the team has been working on it and you're trying to get creative and you've tried to pivot and you're looking and you're saying, we could never have the impact that we feel is needed by our team in this particular way of approaching it. Okay, time to pivot product. Or if you're looking and you're like, my team isn't fully in on this mission, that's when I pivot business and team. But if the team's all in and we can still be creative around that and find a new way and come at it a new angle, maybe bring new products, maybe, yeah, maybe change our business model entirely. It can keep the same brand, but I've got the team with me. Then I can keep shifting around that mission pretty effectively. So that's a thought that's out there. What are your thoughts through there?
No, I think that makes sense. I mean, thinking about it from the standpoint of, who's still motivated, how effective you're being at achieving the mission, and then having that kind of percolate out the options that may be more acceptable or worth pursuing first, I think is a good framework to have. I've never kind of broken it down that way, but I think it's a smart way to kind of think about what options might be the best way to move forward. Maybe not so much whether or not you move forward at all, but it does help surface what options are most likely to be the ones you start with. I
And,
think that makes sense.
and I'll share just one other thought while we're at it, which is if you feel like this organization, this business, we'll just say RetroLux for now, that
Mhm.
RetroLux can hit its mission, but that wasn't as ambitious or broad as you really wanted. And you pushed for it, but it was as much as you could see this business getting to for the next little while, for that 5-year period that you set the mission? If you felt like, well, that's not ambitious enough, but it's doing good, and you're thinking, I just need to build others, think on an enterprise strategy level instead, and knowing I need to do this in energy, lights and such. But over here, we could have impact. And you start naming your others because you start seeing the systemic effect of these different things that actually need to work in collaboration with each other. Raise the vision higher, build our team who's totally aligned with the mission and vision of RetroLux to run and lead it and become a cash cow to actually help you in the rest of the ecosystem that's needed to have the impact that you want. So sometimes it's not abandon, it's graduate, right? And then how do we build those in place? That can be powerful because now you can have teams that collaborate across various companies and how those interact with each other to build. So some thoughts. That mission is a key piece. Here's how I've seen people make it powerful, and then I'll leave you be because you're probably already bored, Leif. You're like, I got this, David. I got this. Let me move on. But to make the mission powerful and real, one, the team comes together around and says, we're serving this North Star, this purpose of reducing suffering, increasing joy, right, of the future of our world and all of its living inhabitants. That's huge. Okay. Now let's do it by taking this much emissions right out of the air, potentially, right? We're going to remove this much, and it's measurable. We're going to remove this much. And then push on it. Is it enough? Ask the team, is that enough? What really would that impact? We know the science. What's enough? How far do we need to go? How long of a time frame do we have? What is measurable in this short term? And push them until they feel nervous and excited at the same time. And one way to do that is to say, okay, give me a 1 to 10 on this. A 10 is, you're crazy. I'm scared to death. There's no way we could ever do it. This is ambitious beyond everything. 1 is easy peasy, slam dunk. Yeah, we can do that simple. If you're not pushing them to like a 6 or a 7 on that scale, it's not grand enough. But if it's at a 9 or a 10, it's pretty depressing. Okay. And so get them in that spot, have those arguments until we get there. And then you have to see, can we build out a plan to actually get there? One we believe we could do. But when they're doing that with you, now, once that's solidified and everyone's hands are going up saying, I am all in, I will sacrifice to make this happen. My discretionary effort, I'm putting on the table, right? Until we get to that point, or once we get to that point, now it's our job as a leader. Just like we had to shift from being the engineer to being a leader at 10, 15 employees, now it's shifting to this, I've got to be an advocate for a mission. I have to champion it to the end. So there isn't a meeting that it isn't said. There's clear metrics that we're all watching. There's impact stories being shared, right? There's hopes of what we're looking for to where the people are excited every day. You're giving them meaning at work in that sense, but we have to keep it alive. We could say, well, of course they're excited. Everyone here is Greenpeace style. Sorry, I know that's not what you said you were, but everyone here is into saving the environment. Well, that's nice, but that doesn't mean they don't have to be reminded every day. And we don't have to have them reminding each other. And so keeping that mission very real and active may help you to push through to the next level to help your business get to where it needs to be. Or it may make it clear that I don't have the team that is really getting excited about this, that they're like, yeah, whatever. Pay me my paycheck. I'm out of here, right? And give them their paycheck and send them on. Anyway, I hope that framework was useful to you. We have just loved having you on the call. Leif, if people want to look into what you're doing, access maybe your softwares or your ideas or thoughts, how would they get in touch with you or with your business?
Yeah, so people can shoot me an email if they want. It's Leif at RetroLux.com, Leif at retrolux.com, or they could give me a call, 208-301-2293. And happy to chat with people and learn more about what they're doing, share stories, see what ways we could help each other. So always love giving back to the community of entrepreneurs, and learning and sharing is a huge part of what helps us all get further down the road. And hopefully achieve our dreams and support our families and our employees' families, and ultimately provide more value to the world.
Oh, I love that. Thanks so much, Leif. That wraps up today's episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast, where we explore the ins and outs of the seven figure journey. Leif, thank you for being a guest on our show today. We loved having you on the show. And for all of you listening in, I hope you'll share, like, do all those things and make the episode more available to other seven figure business owners out there. Keep striving, keep learning, keep caring, keep pushing towards your goals. And until next time.